EJ. Welcome to the first EJCGC meeting of 2022. We are extremely happy to have the EJCGC members back, but also the meeting available for others to view as well. So what we'll do first is I would love if EJCGC members can introduce themselves, just your name and area of interest, area you live in, whichever tidbit you would like to share. I will start. Naila Pope-Hardin, South Sacramento resident. I'm extremely happy to be here. Let's pass it to, we're gonna go and I'll just name folks. Let's do Charlie and then Stephen and Janice.
Thanks, Naila. Charlie Chuden, I'm a Midtown resident, and I'm also excited to be here for this meeting in 2022. You went in order, so I don't remember who was next, but
Steve Sander, South Sacramento resident, and also delighted to be here. Also really excited.
All right, we have Janice, then we'll do Emilio and Ronnie.
Janice, I think I'm the youngest here. Janice, I'm under 18. I'm in my teenage years, the South Sacramento region, and I'm very happy to be here with you all.
Hi, my name is Emilio Bolingit. I live in Southland Park. Excited to be here, except for Steve. You got to get that gas stove out of there. Got to go electric, man.
Good call out. Let's do Ronnie, then Cheyenne and Angelina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ronnie. I live in the Woodlake neighborhood, which is in North Sacramento. Interested in continuing the conversation about environmental justice, and want to give as much access as we can, or can promote for green spaces for everyone. Sorry, I have a sinus infection right now, and I'm pretty sure if I talk more, I'll make less sense as I talk. So thanks for bearing with me.
Cheyenne, I live in Land Park right now. I just recently moved, and I'm interested in air quality.
Hello, I'm Jaina Rahimi. I live in Folsom, work in Sacramento, and I have worked in South Sacramento, and right now I'm doing a project in Del Paso Heights area. My interest is transportation and also green jobs for unemployed and underemployed population. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to have Moise who to introduce himself, and I'm going to drop my email and Moise' email in the chat. If you guys have any questions or anything about concerns about the EJCGC, please email both of us. Moise?
Sure, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Moise. Pronouns. I am, as of a few weeks ago, now working as a communications assistant here at Climate Plan under Naila. So if you have questions about the EJCGC, it'll be my job to help coordinate moving forward. A little bit about me: I am from Sacramento. I was born here, raised here, and we went to school here at Sac State, which is also close by to where I live in District 6 of the city of Sacramento.
Thank you, Moise. And then we have some city, did I make all the EJCJ, Laura, here we go again. All of the EJCGC members introduced themselves. So I'm gonna pass it to some City of Sacramento folks that we have on the line. Jennifer, I'll pass it to you first, and then you can pass it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naila. Really happy to be here. Jennifer Venema. I am the climate action lead for the city of Sacramento, and we're really excited to be back with the EJCGC. I got it right, in the new year. I'm going to kick it to, I see next on the screen, Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Tuller, and I'm an associate planner in the Community Development Department with the city. I live in Land Park, and I'm really happy to be here with you all. Layla?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Layla Atalla. I'm a sustainability analyst in the city's Office of Climate Action and Sustainability. So I'm on Jennifer's team, and I live in Midtown. I'm happy to be seeing this group in the new year. And I'll pass it to Kai.
Hey everyone, Kai Lord Farmer, senior planner in the long range planning group for the city of Sacramento. I'm really excited to be here, and I live in the Oak Park area.
Kai, such good people. So happy to see you here. All right. So if you have any questions in the chat, or if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat as things go on, or use the Q&A feature. If you have any concerns or anything, if you're in the audience, please remember to feel free to ping me or Moise. First thing that so on the agenda today, the things that we're going to be talking about are the electrification ordinance. The EJCGC gave recommendations to the city. This will be a follow-up conversation. Then we'll be talking about community engagement and communications. And then we'll be brainstorming topics that the EJCGC should take up. And during that portion, we would love to get audience feedback of issues that you would like to see us grapple with and discuss here. So now I will pass it to the City of Sacramento folks for their presentation.
Thanks again, Naila. So I'll just kick it off, and I'm going to hand it over to our amazing team here. So what we're coming to focus on is where we're at for planning related to existing building electrification. And we had great conversation with the EJCGC, and you may remember that council adopted the resolution for the guidelines of how we approach existing buildings, recognizing that the ordinance for new buildings was done. So what we're talking about today is where we're building on, because following this direction, the EJCGC actually provided recommendations specifically focused on outreach. So we're here to check in and share what we've been doing. We're just kicking off the project and want to check in and hear back and see if we heard you right. So with that, I'm going to pass it over, and we're really looking forward to your feedback. So Layla, take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we have a brief presentation, and I'm going to let Kai kick us off.
Thanks, Layla. So I'm just going to provide a little bit more context. Thank you, Jennifer, for kicking us off here before we get into some details. So, and I'll be quick because I think everyone knows the city's working on an update to their climate action and adaptation plan right now, with the ultimate goal of reaching carbon neutrality by 2045. And a big part of that is reducing or eliminating emissions from new buildings built in the city, but also the existing residential and commercial building stock. So if you can see in the pie chart on the right, that big slice in green and then the smaller slice in light blue is natural gas use in the city, which accounts for about 15% of the city's overall emissions. So a big part of that is reducing emissions from existing buildings. And so we're here to talk to you about that strategy. And I just wanted to provide a little bit more context. When we talk about building electrification, it can mean a lot of things, but to ground it a little bit, some of the bigger appliances in homes and commercial buildings are furnaces, heating systems, water heaters, gas stoves, and gas clothes dryers. So those are some of the bigger appliances that we're talking about replacing and electrifying when we're talking about building electrification overall. And obviously the benefit is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but it's really important that we, as we implement the climate action plan, we get to see all these other really important co-benefits for the community as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Laura next.
Thanks, Kai. I'll actually jump back in and provide a little bit of context on how we're going to get to those goals that Kai was just describing. So there's that key goal of transitioning all buildings in Sacramento to carbon-free electricity by 2045. And the existing building electrification strategy is going to lay out the roadmap for how we get there. And as Jennifer mentioned, we heard from the EJCGC how the community should be leading at all points in this process. And so that's why we wanted to come back to this group at the early stages of planning this roadmap. Council established a framework for what form the existing building electrification strategy will take, and directed staff that equity should be the foundation of this strategy. And so what we want to discuss in a big part today is how equity is going to be operationalized in this plan. And we have 6 draft equity guardrails, which are these basic criteria for any policy or action that would be included in the existing building electrification strategy, to define what are the expected equity outcomes of the strategy. And so if a policy that would be considered for the strategy doesn't align with those guardrails, then it would need to be adjusted if it's going to be included. And so we have these 6 draft guardrails, and Laura and I will give a little bit more detail on each of them now. So the first one is ensuring equitable access to the health, safety, and comfort benefits of building electrification. Kai was describing, that electrification can improve indoor air quality, reduce risk of fires from cooking, for example, in the homes, and also during extreme heat events or wildfire smoke events, all electric buildings can provide greater resilience benefits. And so this guardrail is about ensuring that although electrification may not be top of mind, we know that living in a healthy and safe environment is really important to folks. So this guardrail is about ensuring that whether someone is a renter, a homeowner, or a small business owner, that they're reaping those benefits of building electrification.
So the next guardrail is complementary housing improvements. And this came really directly from the previous recommendations that the EJCGC shared with the city, which we really appreciate. So we know that in many cases, when we do these electric retrofits, they'll need to be paired with other housing upgrades, such as energy efficiency improvements, sort of improving the building envelope to make sure that a house is comfortable, warm and cool. And then also resolving safety issues like lead paint or asbestos, and potentially things like new roofs before installation of solar panels. And so the purpose of this guardrail is to really ensure that, again, as we're prioritizing retrofits for buildings around Sacramento, that we're also at the same time doing these other upgrades to ensure, again, health and safety of homes and buildings.
Next, energy equity is an important guardrail, and this refers to both reducing energy burden, for example, for households that are paying a large portion of their income on their utility bills, ensuring that everyone has affordable energy in their home, for their small business, for their other kinds of buildings. And additionally, we know that in the future, gas prices are expected to increase dramatically in California, and households or businesses that are still on gas will be exposed to those really increasing prices in the future. And so transitioning households and businesses off of gas can help provide protection from those rising gas prices in the future. And this builds on the energy efficiency upgrades that Laura was describing previously.
Another element we're thinking about as we plan this strategy is the impact that electrification will have on jobs in Sacramento. So we know that retrofitting every building in the whole city will create a lot of job opportunity. But what we need to make sure is that those jobs are going to local folks in Sacramento, that people are well trained and that they're being paid fairly. And then we're also thinking about what we're calling the just transition of the workforce. So there are people that work in the gas industry, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of in this transition to the low carbon economy through other job opportunities. And we will need, maintenance of gas infrastructure and well-trained and fairly paid people doing that work as we make the transition to electrification as well.
Next, although electrification can be a complicated process, maximizing the ease of installation for homeowners, renters, small businesses is another equity guardrail. This means providing different kinds of support for those different audiences. They all have different needs. Creating centralized locations where folks can get that information, and ensuring, as Laura was mentioning, that there's high quality equipment being installed by a well-trained workforce.
So our last draft equity guardrail is this affordable housing and anti-displacement guardrail. So as we've talked about, there's a lot of potential benefits to electrification, but one main concern that comes up is that this process of electrification will lead to higher rent, potentially eviction and displacement of folks in Sacramento. And so we need to structure our policies and programs so that the cost of electrification is not getting passed on to renters, and that electrification is not being used as a means of eviction or displacement. And we want to, connect electrification with support for affordable housing production, preservation, and tenant protections. So I think that's sort of the end of our equity guardrails. I mean, we're going to pause and do a poll quickly, and then we are going to have this sort of follow-up survey. So this will be a sort of a quick temperature read of what we've just described. And then we're hoping that you'll share a little bit more feedback after the meeting in a sort of open-ended response. Is that right? In terms of the poll? Okay.
Yeah, and so
Cool.
to clarify, I will do a quick Zoom poll right now, so everyone participating and watching should be able to participate in that. We'll maybe give it 2 minutes or so to run this poll, and then at the end of the city's presentation, we'll also share a link to a deeper poll.
So the question is, to what extent do the equity guardrails reflect your priorities? Oh no, this is just an audience vote. Panelists cannot vote. So we're going to encourage EJCGC members to say their answers out loud then.
Or could you put them in the chat so we could record them?
Oh, that would be great too.
So on a 1 from 5 scale, the question to clarify again is, to what extent do the equity guardrails reflect your priorities? 1, strongly don't reflect. 2, don't quite reflect. 3, unsure. 4, somewhat reflect. Or 5, strongly reflect. So
All right.
just a few more people.
Okay, thank you, Moise. And then we can also open it up for discussion now as well. So if folks want to, Steve, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead and unmute and make your comment.
Thanks so much, Naila. So yeah, I think I put somewhat, or I think I put unsure. I think this is an encouraging start to the conversation. I just have a little, I just have, I guess, maybe a bit of a concern or issue with just the phraseology in terms of, or this being kind of a guardrail approach. The way I approach considerations of equity, racial equity, and so on. Equity, and we talked about operationalizing on equity. So equity, to me is not a series of guardrails. It's rather a framework, to be operationalized around. And so I think coming at it from a more an approach of, how can we put equity at the forefront of each and every conversation we have in this space, rather than, let's put these kind of backstops in to ensure that we're not running afoul of equity. I think maybe both approaches are needed, but just to kind of guide the discussion should be, equity, should be at the forefront. Mhm.
And I do have those results I can quickly share. So everyone should be able to see kind of an even spread. So just to quickly summarize, we have 2 strongly don't reflect, and then 3 for unsure, 3 for somewhat reflect, and 3 for strongly reflect.
Yeah, Steve, thank you for those comments. Ronnie says he totally agrees. I would agree as well. Guardrails, I think when we heard about the presentation, I think I said to Moise, guardrails remind me of bumpers on when you're bowling, and it just doesn't feel like it's really strong enough. It feels like we can bump into the guardrails, and we need something to really help guide and like move things forward. So those would be my thoughts. Any other EJCGC members want to share?
Excuse me, I definitely would like to share.
After you, we have Charlie. So
or Charlie could go first.
No, you're fine. Keep going,
okay.
But I'm building a deck for us.
Oh, okay. I understand. So I think the plan was definitely, it was a beautiful slideshow. It was very informative. I can say that there was a lot of information there. I took a lot of good notes. I would like to applaud you guys on that part. From what I kind of got out of it and from what I've seen, I like the gist of it. Like I like the purpose, the principle and the purpose of that is amazing. But from where I'm coming from and me only living for 15 years on this earth and in this city, and how I feel towards what you guys have planned, I think it's amazing, but I also think that we also have to start from the bottom up. You can't build this plan without a solid foundation. You can't build anything if you don't have a solid foundation. The building, it will end up corrupting sooner or later. So I think before we more so, I think this is an amazing idea and that this would be a beautiful thing and it would definitely benefit our city in many ways. But I also think another thing of importance will be reaching out to the community first, because there is no helping the city with buildings, because buildings are fulfilled by people. You're doing all these things for the people. So I think it will be very important to consider the community and go to the communities and get the opinions of those in the communities, because ultimately you're going to be affecting their lives. Say, yes, we are a few people in a city full of thousands of people. So I think it will be very important and very significant that we start at the roots, which are the people, because there is no city without no people.
Totally agree with you. And actually, we have a few more slides where we're going to talk about one of the things we want to get feedback from you all after this check-in on the equity guardrails is about our approach to community engagement. So we have just a couple more things that we'd love to share with you, but we want to sort of wrap, I think, give an opportunity for discussion first on this first part. And then I absolutely agree. We have to start with outreach.
Perfect. Charlie, then Emilio.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most of my comments would be geared towards the implementation, like what actions would follow as a result of those policies. Sort of, and I thought they established a good common understanding of sort of the equity guardrails as we're framing it. I just wonder what actions would follow, and I think sort of building off of Janice's last comments, ensuring that they're applicable to the population served. But overall, I thought it was a good sort of common understanding basis for this conversation.
I guess related to the anti-displacement protections, I think I am trying to do some electrification in my own home, and it's such a complicated process. And you're dealing with lots of different programs that have lots of different requirements. I think rather than adding like a special process to make sure that you're not displacing folks during electrification upgrades and rental housing, I'd like to just see the city, pass some stronger anti-displacement protections, and just really try and streamline and simplify this process as much as possible. Yeah, just reducing the administrative burden on folks that want to go through this and on city staff. So yeah.
And also really quickly, I apologize, but something just came to mind after Mr. Emilio finished speaking. I definitely think that is something that is very important, making processes like these as easy as possible. Because if we're speaking of going into the homes and the buildings of people who have been here for maybe a decade or two, they're not going to be very open to the process of change. Humans, we are creatures of comfortability. We are creatures of habit. We do not like change. So I feel like making this process as easy as possible, especially for those whom have been homeowners for years, for decades, who have been around for years and years, who do not know how to even work new electronics. For example, a woman like my grandmother, she doesn't even have an iPhone. She has a flip phone and she is completely fine with that. So I feel like making the process as easy and as simple as possible, because there are people who are stuck in their ways, who do not want change, who do not want different from what they've known. So I feel like making these processes like these as easy as possible, and making sure that you guys are willing and have the resources put in place to help those whom are more curious, who do not know, who are more so do not want to go with what you guys are proposing to them. So I feel like definitely having resources out and telling them, well, we have this put in place to help you. We have this to help you. We have somebody who can come out, somebody on call, making sure things like that are on the front line, like a 911 call of, okay, you're having trouble with operating your new stove because you do not know how to work it and you've never had to work something that has been electrified like that. We have somebody on call. We actually have 5 people on call who are there to help you. And this being in store will also be beneficial for people who are in need of jobs, because that also puts in a new scheme of people having jobs to be put in. That is a position for people to fill, for people to make more money, for people to profit, for people to, you can employ people for jobs like that. Somebody who's always on go, who has their own transportation, who is able to help, and who knows the systems that you guys plan to put in store. So I think definitely making this as simple and as easy as possible would be number one.
Thank you so much. Angelina?
I just want to add that I agree with the comments about the naming and the fact that how we want to, maybe you have it in your future slides, but I think what you talked about, especially the first 3 or 4 guardrails, were about benefits of this if you can afford it. It wasn't about how you reach equity. It was about, for example, you said it's safer for people if they have if their building is electrified, or it's more comfortable, or the cost of utility would be less. Yes, we know that. The problem is that to get to that point, how we want to make sure that we don't leave people behind, and what are your strategies to make sure that their buildings are electrified. Now those are benefits. But I guess the last 2 things that you said, one about jobs and one about displacement, it was kind of like a strategy, because I hope that you have strategies in place that would say, okay, we are not gonna electrify buildings unless we know that whoever is contractor is hiring so many people, local people, or train unemployed people or underemployed people in the community. Or you said that for rent, you are going to make sure that you work with housing agencies. I love those 2, because I think they were about how you can bring equity, but the first few items were about the benefits of electrification. I don't know how you can say that it is about bringing equity to the project. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're having a lively discussion in the chat that I won't read, but will encourage folks to. Won't read out loud. I'll read it, but I won't read it out loud for you guys. Any other EJCGC thoughts? All right.
So, ooh,
Ar-
sorry.
no, go ahead, Janice. And then it looks like we have Steve after Janice with some final thoughts.
I think rounding it off with what Miss Angelina just said, I think that should be on top of making it easily accessible and easier to operate. I think making sure those who are employed and those who will be helping with this process are members of the community. Like, I think that should be number one, because you cannot, if we're being quite honest and very transparent, you cannot expect the community to be on board if the community does not really benefit. They weren't really going to look, people, they will know the benefit of more so electrification and seeing that, oh, it's good, it's what our society is leaning towards. But more so, like, if it's not benefiting them in a way, more so putting them at a beneficial position to where they are benefiting as well as you guys are benefiting with more jobs, being able to make that income, maybe having that as another side stream of income, with them being able to help and work in these buildings, help and work with helping these things get done. It does not benefit anyone except for those whom are creating this plan if it doesn't help the community more. So I feel like definitely putting a position to where there are people in the communities getting jobs. And I'm not just talking about from specific communities, I'm talking about from every communities. And I feel like, if we're being honest, a great idea would be for you guys to have a workshop of maybe training kids who are in high school students looking for a job, looking for something to put on their resume, and looking for something to learn to do, because there are a lot of kids out here looking for work. I see it every day going to school, kids in high school, kids in college. There are people who need work in this city. There are a lot of people who need work. So I feel like more so getting into the community, like the deep community, the kids from Oak Park, the kids from Valley High, the kids in North Sacramento, South Sacramento, Citrus Heights. I feel like helping all kids and helping everybody be able to benefit from this process and encourage this process. Because if you are making people from all communities happy and they're satisfied, they're getting a job from you, they will talk about this. Oh, electrification, look into it. Get your house electrified. Is your building electrified? Making sure that they inform everybody. Because if you guys become the talk of the town, then this plan will end up going by smoother and faster if everybody is pleased with it.
Thank you, Janice. I can't wait to be your chief. I want to be your chief of staff. That's like my dream job. Steve, then Ronnie next.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. I totally agree with all of that. And, centering community, for instance, with this electrification through, for instance, nonprofits and other partnerships, is a way of getting at equity at the bringing equity to the forefront. So yeah, just communicating in the chat that we didn't reinvent the wheel. There are already programs. For instance, the city of Claremont, I was did a little bit of work way back when, and they already they were able to leverage existing community partnerships to help with grant funding and so on, and help make funds available for homeowners to complete energy retrofitting with the assistance of some of these partners, community partners. So yeah, really leaning into that space, I think, is a way that we can get at equity, and then also address some of the need to complete energy retrofitting and electrification of existing buildings.
Thank you. Ronnie, last will be our last comment on this.
Thank you. To Janice's point, and also to Steve's, I really appreciated the presentation and understanding the direction that the city of Sacramento is going. And I understand that you can't put everything in a PowerPoint or all of your strategy and planning, but I would like to know a little bit more about the how you're strategizing around like change management, because Janice is right, like trying to get people on board with massive change like electrification, you know, whether it's restaurants or residences, it's going to be challenging. It's going to take a lot of strategy. The other one is you had mentioned workforce. You know, in the past, you know, it seems like there's promises from governments, whether it's, you know, Sacramento's or the federal government, about, you know, workforce training, transitioning people from petroleum to clean energy. What are some of those strategies, some workforce development strategies that you're thinking of? You know, they don't need to be really in depth. I'm just looking for, you know, some summary thoughts. What are you brainstorming so far for both change management, but also, you know, transitioning the workforce? Both those are just huge undertakings.
Naila, do you want a very quick response before we transition it back over to Laura?
That would be great, Jennifer.
Okay. I'd say that water conservation has been one opportunity that's really prioritized. And the city also has about $7 million for youth employment in the public sector to pay for wages. And that's something our economic team is scoping out with the mayor's office. So there's a bucket of strategies. We'd be happy to talk more about that with the EJCGC at a future meeting.
Thank you. Before we move onto the next, we still have more on this topic, correct?
Yeah, we were hoping to share just a little bit about our outreach strategy. I think we probably made a strategic mistake and we should have done all the slides and then had discussion, but it's okay.
No worries, it's separate from the engagement talk.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, all right, go ahead, sorry.
All right. So we just wanted to really briefly talk a little bit about our community engagement strategy. So again, we're in this sort of year-long process of creating a strategy about how we're going to electrify buildings in Sacramento. And so we're at the very beginning. And so we're, the equity guardrails are things that every sort of strategy that we would implement would have to pass through them in order to be included in the plan. So this is just a brief summary of our community engagement. So we're planning to, as you can see, planning to do several large community workshops, as well as some more targeted focus group and sort of technical meetings with various audiences and community members. In addition, we're going to be creating some outreach toolkits. So I think, as we've discovered, this is a really complex topic and it affects different groups differently. So one of the things that we're planning to do is to create these toolkits that are sort of tailored for specific groups that really have information. Again, if you're thinking about, if you're a renter, you have different concerns than if you're a homeowner or if you're you know, someone in the workforce. And so making sure that we have some materials that sort of explain how electrification would work and that we could get people's feedback on different strategies. So we're going to be creating these toolkits that could be used by community partners and city staff to reach more people, to sort of amplify our outreach efforts. We've also budgeted for what we're calling a mini grant that we're going to partner with community organization. And that money could be used for stipends to pay people to participate in group meetings or for food, childcare, transportation, etc. We also, it's not mentioned here, but plan to offer translation services for folks as requested at meetings or for key documents, really trying to make sure that our outreach is reaching as many people as possible. And so this is just a brief overview of the sort of groups that we're thinking about. And we would love to get your feedback here as well. So if you feel like there's a group that we're missing, we'd love to hear about it. So we've been working to sort of flesh out this list with specific community groups and individuals. But as you know, we're talking about electrification really touches everyone. And so we want to make sure we're reaching a wide range and using an outreach strategy that's going to work for each group. So that's something that we have in our survey, is sort of thinking about, you know, how should we be connecting with renters? How should we be connecting with homeowners, whether it's, you know, a smaller meeting, a larger workshop? And we'd love to get your feedback on that as well. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much. I will just say it is exciting and refreshing to see that our feedback was taken seriously. And we look forward to it being strengthened and implemented. And so thank you so much for bringing this back and letting us offer feedback again. So I put the link in the chat earlier for folks that are listening in. We have room if you want to be a part of this exciting discussion next time, and not just in the chat. Please consider applying for the EJCGC. We still have some slots available. Next thing, thank you, Moise, pop it in the chat again. Next, I'm going to pass it back to the city to talk about communications and engagement.
And I will stay super brief. We're going to just plant this as a teaser that over the last year in 2021, we had such great topic on a range of issues with this group. And I know that you don't always see a clear immediate action or outcome for every idea that's discussed, but we've taken a lot of that feedback, and as it's been percolating, we're using that to inform how we're developing a broader climate equity-based pilot with one-time funding at the city. And so we've been conducting some interviews with some folks here, for example, and we'll be working to essentially report back and come and present some options that we're going to be asking for feedback on publicly. And we think that's another opportunity to help work towards a lot of the goals and opportunities like I'm hearing discussed here tonight. So that's for a forthcoming climate equity pilot driven and grounded in equity. So we're excited to hear more. Just wanted to flag that, and it'll be a topic for future meetings, we hope. Thanks, Naila.
All right, no problem. Okay, well, Jennifer, we are back on time. So for the last 15 minutes, we'd love to open it up to talk about items that we can talk about in future meetings. We started this discussion a little bit before everyone logged on. So I will recap. We talked about potential topics are a wealth of different transportation issues, the transportation priority plan, the potential ballot measure that's coming up, just transportation in general and how we are planning for it. The climate action plan is something that we want to talk about in future meetings. Climate action and adaptation plan is a topic. And then also homelessness and our unhoused neighbors, how it relates to transit, but just in general, that topic, and environmental justice. And those are topics that we brought up. If folks in the audience are interested in hearing us talk about a question, please put it in the chat. The other thing is we are talking about doing more field trips and being able to see some of these communities and places. So we'll also open up space if you have a place that you think would be a good field trip for the EJCGC, and we can add those to the list.
Naila, I would like to add job opportunities and workforce to our list for underserved community members.
Wonderful.
And we can tie it to transportation, to homelessness. I heard Janice was talking about homelessness and how we should take care of that before taking care of other issues. But I just want to remind her that sometimes transportation, cost of transportation or energy are the reasons that people get homelessness, experience homelessness. So if we can prevent that, yes, this is not gonna solve homelessness problem that exists, but it's gonna prevent it from getting worse. So we can tie it to homelessness as well.
Yeah, and Jennifer Venema offered to talk about green, clean and green jobs. So I think we can definitely schedule that in. Any other things? We won't keep you or hold you if not. All right. Well, with that, are there any topics or announcements that folks would like to make while we're on the line still? And this is for audience members too. Please feel free to put something in the chat or raise your hand. One of the things along the lines of transportation that we're talking about is the city put on a transportation workshop a few weeks ago. I spoke at it. They had a few other speakers. And I think me and Moise are trying to figure out how to have a more impactful conversation about transportation, that we know that when the city is involved, and when the city is involved, so many council members can show up at a time, the conversations aren't able to be more candid. And so we're trying to think of how to help facilitate that more candid conversation about transportation with, if it'll be a few council members, the council. So it's not just like a meeting presentation, but it can actually be some type of dialogue. So if folks have ideas around that, please share them with me and Moise, because we would love to help build that into something.
Just also jump in and add that transportation workshop that the city did and spoke at me was during a city council meeting. And so that isn't really the most interactive space. The kind of interaction there was through public comment, but hopefully the one that we're trying to imagine is one that is more interactive.
That's great, Moise. Thank you.
I have more so like a question about when it comes to like us, like well, not us, but the plan for this major electrification in the city. One of my questions would be, what is the guarantee that this will be efficient 20 to 40 years down the line? Like and I'm talking about the resources of the security that this provides, because when you think of people whom have used gas and gas products and gas like ran things their whole life and all that they have known, what do they have to put their faith in and their trust in that this electrification will be able to sustain them for the years to come and the generations to come? Like the surety and the security of knowing this is where it's coming from, this is how they're getting it, and this is how they plan to be able to sustain this. That's one of my more so like very curious questions, because people don't move unless they're informed, especially people who have a lot to lose, like homeowners and people who own buildings and people who run these places, whom the plan is to go in and electrify those places and those things in these areas. So I think it's definitely important to have that information available and have that information known of what will be able to sustain us for the years to come, because things, they last in the moment, but the way I see it is, what is the security that this will be around by the time I have grandkids and my grandkids have kids, that this will last for those many years and those many generations. So I feel like it is very important that people are able to know what you guys are putting your trust in, so they know what they can rely and depend on, and if that is something that they want to rely and depend on, because ultimately this is people's lives that we're looking at. Electrification, people don't know this. A lot of people, especially the generations before mine, they aren't equipped to this, they aren't used to this. So I feel like definitely being able to provide that information and that security.
Thank you so much, Janice. I think that's a wonderful thought about the longevity of this. Like, we want to make sure it's not just a quick fix, but it is something that's sustainable. I wish we could just close it out on that word alone, but I want to also highlight what folks said in the chat, which is potentially bringing SMUD on to talk about their involvement in electrification and EJ issues. Yes, Naeem knows the meeting's supposed to be ending soon, so he's ready. And then we have some more discussion about SMUD and and city strategy considering change management. We will make sure that all of this is documented. And I think at some point we're going to try and schedule these out months in advance. Well, the EJCGC meetings are happening the first Thursday of every month. We'll try and schedule the topics in advance, far enough in advance so folks can prepare. Any other final thoughts, Steve?
Thank you. I think you know, this isn't necessarily front of mind for maybe us folks, but when I interface with members of the community when it comes to environmental issues, what comes up, you know, front and center is, you know, illegal dumping. I think that's, you know, basically number one issue for people when they are thinking about their environment and how we interface with our environment. So, you know, maybe that could be a way, a starting point for us. You know, we can try to get members of the community more interested in this space if we try to cater to some of the considerations that I think people are really dealing with on a daily basis. And from there, yeah, maybe we can try to get them interested in looping in with some of the climate action planning, some of the, you know, the other transit oriented development processes that are going through, you know, Stockton Boulevard corridor project to, you know, if they, the average person, you know, even the who doesn't, who even lives near Stockton Boulevard may not even be familiar with that, but you know, that's just an example. So anyway, for what it's worth, illegal dumping, that might be something worth investigating. Thank you.
Great comment. Illegal dumping, the sleeper issue. If someone solved illegal dumping, it would build probably the most trust for any agency. All right,
really
Jenny,
quickly,
we're gonna have you be the last comment.
okay. One thing that I had to say was rounding it about with the comment that had mentioned SMUD. Like an example for what I just said was homeowners, people who live, they have been depending and relying on SMUD for as long as they've been in business. But we see from time to time, SMUD goes out. There are people who are left without resources when things happen. Maybe the weather is bad and SMUD ends up going out. They're having malfunctions in their system. Like that system has gone out before. But you see, because of how long it has sustained people, they continue to trust in it and rely on it. So my purpose of where I'm coming from is more so we see a system like SMUD, people continue to rely and depend on SMUD because of how long they've been in business, but it does still go out. But the guarantee of them being able to sustain people and lives for so long, people continue to entrust in them. So what I'm seeing is, what is it that you guys are guaranteeing for people to continue to entrust in the electrification that you guys plan on doing? And that's it. That's all. I'm done.
All right, Janice, drop the mic. I think we also have to loop PG&E in on some of that then as well, because that's them. They hold some of that, probably a bigger line share than SMUD on some of that. All right. Thank you everyone so much for a great meeting. We greatly appreciate your input and participation. And if you have any questions, please message me or Moise as follow-up. Moise, you unmuted for announcement or to say goodbye?
Do you want to quickly pass to Rayla to talk about or talk about survey?
The survey? Yes, Jennifer dropped the survey in the chat. I will, or Layla dropped it in the chat. Oh, perfect. Layla put it back in the chat. Everyone, for not just EJCGC folks, but folks that are also listening, please feel free to complete the survey. Is there a timeline that folks need to complete it by, that the survey will close, Layla?
That's a great thing that we didn't think about. Would a week be reasonable?
Yeah, EJCGC members, try and let's fill it out in a week. Does that work?
Good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. It was nice meeting with you all again. I missed you all very much.
We missed you too.
Bye.
Bye.